What is going on, guys? Hassan Malik back here again, and yesterday the second episode of Loki dropped on Disney+, which means we gotta continue our weekly series where I break down the episodes and just give my thoughts on it. And as usual, just because of the way these episodes are structured, I will have to spoil the entire thing, so if you haven't seen episode 2 of Loki, make sure to go watch that first and then come back to this video. Alright guys, so there's your spoiler warning. Now let's go ahead and talk about this episode. So right off the bat, I do want to talk about the pacing of this show. The first episode was like 50 minutes long and so much happened in that one episode, and I thought the second episode was going to slow things down, but they didn't pump the brakes at all. This episode kept things going, and it was even longer this time at like 54 minutes. And so much happened in this one episode. The plot moved like crazy, and I'm really happy to see that, especially comparing it to shows like The Bad Batch, which is also running on Disney+. And as you guys know, I'm pretty frustrated with that show because it's moving too slow, but Loki here is not disappointing at all. I think I like the pacing of this show the best. Like, these first two episodes have probably got to be the best of any of the Marvel series that we've seen so far. Not taking anything away from WandaVision or the Falcon Winter Soldier, both of those shows are really great, and they don't really suffer from pacing issues in general, although WandaVision did have some episodes where they felt a little bit short. But regardless, these two first episodes of Loki are really strong, and I think they're some of the best that we've seen with these Marvel series. Anyways, let's talk about our main man here, which is Loki, and he progresses a lot in this one episode. The major thing that I noticed in this episode was the fact that Loki isn't completely a good guy. That was one big issue I had coming into this show. I didn't want him to turn into a good guy really fast because we'd already seen that arc previously in the MCU with Loki, so I wanted them to treat this variation of Loki a little bit differently. Although I do know he's going to end up being the hero at the end of the day, I still like knowing that his motivations at the moment are kind of evil and cynical. Like right now, all he pretty much wants to do is meet the Timekeepers and take over their position, because he's come to realize that the TVA is pretty much the ultimate power in the universe, and that is pretty much everything that the Loki from 2012 was working towards. So that makes a lot of sense for his character at this moment in the timeline. And even though throughout the episode we see him building his relationship with Mobius, we see them both gaining trust for each other, at the end of the day, at the very end of the episode, Loki does betray them and escapes with Lady Loki. So far I've been really impressed with how they've handled this Loki character. I was really skeptical about it coming into this show as to how they're going to bring this Loki variation in and make him feel different from the Loki that we've already seen in the MCU. But so far it feels great, it feels fresh, and I'm really excited to see how they're going to treat this Loki character in future episodes. Now, speaking of that relationship between Mobius and Loki, I really liked it in this episode. It felt like a buddy cop movie almost. Like, all the banter they have while doing all this detective stuff is really fun to watch, and the relationship and chemistry on screen works great. One of the special things about their relationship that happens in this episode is their conversations that they have during that cafeteria scene. And that conversation really stuck out to me because it felt really deep, and it made you think about what free will means in the MCU. Like, if everything has been predetermined and written down somewhere, then do we really have free will? And I think that's a really interesting concept. There was also this really cool line in this show that stuck out to me a lot. It was from Mobius, who said, "Existence is chaos, nothing makes any sense, so we try to make sense of it." And I thought that was an amazing quote, and I'm sure it's going to end up on a bunch of different t-shirts. Also, I know I said in last week's episode that I thought Mobius was going to end up turning evil, but I think I'm going to have to walk back my previous statement there, because based off this episode, I think Mobius may end up trusting Loki and help him in his cause to destroy the TVA. I really do think the TVA are like the main bad guys in this show. It's definitely not going to be the TVA, or not really the TVA per se, but more the Timekeepers themselves, because they're super mysterious and ominous and we don't know anything about them, so they definitely do seem like villains. Anyways, another really cool part of this episode, and really the show as a whole, was traveling through all these different key moments throughout history. Like, they talked a lot about Ragnarok in this, which was great to hear. We also got to see Pompeii, which was an absolutely hilarious scene, and on top of that, we even went into the future and saw that hurricane in Alabama in 2050, and I really like seeing things like that are sort of in our near future. Also, there was that Roxxon reference, which was pretty cool to see, and maybe that'll be an Easter egg to them having a larger role in the MCU. Anyways, the big reveal at the end of the episode here was the fact that the variant that they've been chasing this entire time was actually Lady Loki, and I think most fans knew this was going to happen. We had a bunch of leaked images of Lady Loki in her costume from months ago, and on top of that, we have a whole bunch of LEGO leaks which confirm the fact that we will be getting Lady Loki in the upcoming LEGO Marvel CMF series. So with those two things combined, I already knew she was going to be the variant. I just didn't think they were going to reveal her this soon into the show. Like, we are only on episode 2 and we've already seen Lady Loki, and I didn't think they would reveal her till much later in the show, and this just makes me so much more excited for what this show has in store, because if they've already revealed Lady Loki at this point, then I'm sure they're going to absolutely blow our minds with the upcoming episodes. We didn't get to see too much of Lady Loki in this episode, but I do think think her costume looked pretty good for the amount that we saw. And lastly, I just want to talk about the soundtrack and the cinematography in this episode. They were absolutely exceptional, especially towards the end of the episode. That one shot at the ending with the red lighting and Loki standing in the middle of the frame, that was one of the best looking shots I've ever seen in the MCU. Like the soundtrack going at the same time, it all just felt so epic and real, and you could really feel the amount of pressure Loki had on his mind about making the decision to betray the TVA and join Lady Loki. So yeah, this show has been absolutely firing on all cylinders, and this episode was even better than the last one in my opinion. I'm hoping the show continues this pace and just keeps getting better and better. That would be absolutely amazing. I am really excited for this next episode because I do think we're going to spend a lot of time with Loki and Lady Loki and help flesh out what's going on outside of the TVA. But yeah guys, overall this was an amazing episode. I am really liking this show so far. As usual guys, before you head out, make sure to go down in the comments below and let me know what you guys thought about this week's episode. How do you guys feel about Lady Loki being in this show, and how would you compare this episode to the last one? Also, just based off the first two episodes here, how would you compare this show compared to the other two Marvel series? Whatever you're thinking guys, anything and everything, make sure to leave it down in the comments below. But that will pretty much do it for me. Again, thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.